we did everything we could possibly to get through the pandemic and save as many lives as we possibly could, which meant bring in whatever piece of technology there is. It was moving so fast. And luckily, we're at a point where we could breathe for a second, evaluate our systems, optimize our systems, lower our total cost of licensing and software by rationalizing and converging software so that we get to the right sized technology footprint.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Brad Miller. Brad is the Chief Information Officer of Moderna, a roughly $7 billion revenue company that has the mission to deliver the greatest possible impact to people through mRNA medicines. Perhaps most famously, Moderna was one of the small number of companies to deliver the COVID-19 vaccine at scale. Brad's been in his role for a bit more than a year and a half, and as CIO, he oversees the development and implementation of cutting-edge technology systems, driving digital transformation, and ensuring data security measures. I look forward to hearing more about how his team is impacting everything from R&D, drug development, and manufacturing in innovative ways. Brad's a former Chief Technology Officer of Capital One and a former Executive Vice President of Operations and Technology at MasterCard. Brad, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Hey, Peter, thank you for having me out today and joining your show.
It's a great pleasure. Well, Brad, let's begin with Moderna. I provided a little bit about the company's mission. Maybe you can take it from there and provide a bit more of a sketch as to the business you're in.
Yeah, obviously we're in the healthcare business. And as you said, the mission of our company is to have the greatest impact on humanity. And we do that through mRNA medicines, whether that be vaccines or therapeutics. And that's the main focus of the company and of the organization.
And talk a bit about your role as Chief Information Officer. No two roles are quite the same. What's within your purview?
So everything technology-based across the company. So whether that's what I like to call the core digital part of the organization, which is our data, our AI platforms, our cloud, our security, our network, that's kind of like the core digital side. And that serves our businesses. And so then on the business side, it's covering all the innovation from a technology perspective that's happening, whether it be R&D, our commercial business, or our manufacturing business. And so that's kind of how I've split the organization in order to obsess about ensuring we deliver the greatest outcome to the businesses so we can serve our customers.
That's a great overview. And I'd love to have you talk a little bit about tech's role in overall R&D and innovation in an organization like yours. Obviously very information-based, research-based. I can only imagine the role that technology plays to ensure that members of the broader team can get their hands on the great research that came before to stand on the shoulders of it rather than reinvent it as one of many applications potentially. Can you talk a bit about some of the interesting ways in which your organization impacts the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you think about it, maybe we'll just go through the chain of the process of what it takes to deliver a drug out the door. And obviously that starts in research. And research from a technology perspective is mostly profoundly impactful. How do you assimilate all the information that could possibly be out there, whether it be articles, data, no matter where that information is coming from? How do you bring it into your system? How do you synthesize that? And how do you understand what is going to have the greatest impact from a drug or a vaccine that we bring to market? And in our space, it's really understanding the diseases that are out there and understanding the medicine, and then what technologies we can use internally to process that information and help our scientists develop new drugs that save lives, whether that be from the tablet that they're using to document in. I love scientists. They still love paper and pen and old tablets, and the ways in which working are very ingrained. And so how do you support that so that they can be their best and yet evolve them to the promised land of, significantly leveraging high throughput technology? And at Moderna, we started with technology, especially in R&D. And that's where we started our AI journey with machine learning way back when, 10 years ago. And as a result, we've created this mass set of data. And so in R&D, it's really about that processing of the data. On the clinical side, it's really about how do we help our clinicians and our development organization make decisions as fast as we possibly can as we get data from our studies in. And how do you protect that data so that data can't be commingled between blinded and unblinded, so the purity of your studies stay the same and the systems that enable you to do that? And so there's a lot of work happening of how to create more efficient trials It's one of our largest costs at the company, and rightfully so, because we have amazing participants that are willing to help us evaluate the efficacy of our drugs and vaccines. And so we put a lot of work and effort into streamlining that. And then shifting a little to the right of that would then be manufacturing. And so obviously there's a ton of technology involved in manufacturing and running of our systems and the software. And how do we innovate that? Like, I just hopped out of a meeting when we were talking about how to leverage robotics more within our manufacturing facility so that we can lower our cost of goods. And then finally, it's on the commercial side. As you know, Moderna is only a new commercial company in terms of bringing products to market through a commercial channel versus what happened through COVID. And so we had to build the capabilities of commercial. And so luckily, with my background in e-commerce, previously at Amazon, that's near and dear to my heart, in terms of how do we scale the company in a different way than the past using e-commerce-based technology versus Salesforce to engage with all of our different types of customers. And so that's a little spattering of like the impact on the business through the chain. And then obviously underneath that, it's like cloud, network, data systems, AI that sits underneath all of that.
Yeah, really interesting. I know that as COVID-19 vaccine demand has decreased, thank goodness, in many ways, that's the case, of course, as to the rationale behind that. The company's adapted the business to fit a more predictable seasonal endemic market. And I wonder the experience of having gone through this very rapid process, all hands on deck, what the residue of that looks like in now thinking about that new mode of doing business as a result of some of the changes. Can you describe that, especially the technology implications of it?
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, you're spot on. I mean, we had the one product of COVID, and the whole part of our business is to diversify. And so we have our respiratory franchise, but we also have a latent franchise, and we have a rare disease franchise and an oncology franchise. And so luckily for us, luckily I'm at a company where I get to stand on the shoulders of giants that have built this amazing medicine platform, which enables us to reuse the same platform to deliver, whether it be a COVID vaccine, a rare disease, a latent, or an oncology. It's the same platform, and that is very unique to Moderna. And so for now, what we're doing is we're really focused on truly diversifying that business. As you know, we've come out with our RSV as our second drug. We're working on flu. We're working on oncology. We're working on rare disease. And these drugs are in late stage trials. And so we have a great pipeline coming. So from a business perspective, that's the shift away from COVID. From a technology perspective, it is fun. It is interesting because we did everything we could possibly to get through the pandemic and save as many lives as we possibly could, which meant bring in whatever piece of technology. There is little inbound technology decision governance that's happening. It was moving so fast. And luckily, we're at a point where we could breathe for a second, evaluate our systems, optimize our systems, lower our total cost of licensing and software by rationalizing and converging software, whether it be third-party software that we've purchased or software that we're building ourselves, so that we get to the right sized technology footprint. We had to do that on the manufacturing side because obviously we scaled up to deliver billions of doses. And so now it's like we're doing the same thing on the technology side as we go through that, which, as a software engineer, that's fun. Like, to come and inherit something that's perfect. Actually, I don't know if that exists in the world where there's truly that perfect system, but to take something and build a team around it and make it special to serve the needs of this company at the size where we are with the people we have that's where that innovative fun is really happening.
I can really tell how much fun you are having through the enthusiasm of your answer. I appreciate that, Brad. You alluded to a short while ago artificial intelligence in brief, and I'd love to double click on that a little bit further.
Sure.
I know that you're particularly excited about the way in which the organization has and can continue to leverage AI to do more with less, as you've described it, across the value stream that you described before. Can you talk a bit about the AI and its use, and what are some of the primary value propositions you see coming from its use?
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'll start with, luckily, we're well positioned as a company, as a technology stack to leverage AI. Our technology is born in the cloud. So we are where, you need massive processing throughput. We don't have to refactor, monolithic systems into distributed systems, and we don't have to move them from mainframes to cloud. We're in a very good position there, and a lot of good decisions happened prior to me. So that's kind of one thing that sets us up. The other side is the people. Right from our CEO down, it's a very driven, like if we don't leverage AI, we will be left behind, is a mentality we have, a sense of urgency around it from Stefan, our CEO, right through the organization. And so the people that we have and luckily the HR systems we have around learning and the academy view of which we think about Moderna, we have different academies for learning. We're very, very focused on learning as one of our key mindsets. And so taking on a new technology and embedding it into the company, the framework was there for us to do that at scale already, which is amazing. And plus all the great hiring we've done, especially in my organization for AI specific over the last year and a half. Like we've hired a tremendous amount of people in Seattle as well as in Boston, all from technology backed, experienced companies like the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Microsoft that enable us to be able to understand the technology and now apply it to medicine. And then finally, really, it's around, for us, what really excites us and sets us up is the partnerships we've developed in AI with OpenAI, with Microsoft, specifically, a partnership of the real co-development with OpenAI, as you take a very consumer-based product and turn it into an enterprise-based product for the use cases that we have and other enterprises have. And it's just been a dream to work with these organizations and partner so closely and co-develop. So that's kind of what sets us up and sets the foundation for us to be able to be successful. Because as you know, Peter, I could bring any technology in, and unless you have that people, that technology, that process, partnerships, that culture, it'll sit on the shelf or it'll be underutilized. And so for us, it's a really big focus on everything that will make the adoption of that technology the most useful for the company and the most leveraged. And so that's kind of where we've been focused.
Really interesting. I wonder if we can linger a little longer on the academies for learning that you noted. As you point out, there's a number of, naturally, even thinking about OpenAI and generative AI in the grand scheme of things, still relatively new solutions, especially as you point out from a commercial perspective. Can you talk a bit about the academies and how they are developed to foster that learning agility to ensure that the organization is continuously building the skills of the future as opposed to resting on the laurels of skills that are leveraged in the past or the present and past?
Yeah, that's the main point of our academies. It is twofold. One is obviously to bring people up to speed as they enter the company. Obviously, you could see I would probably, from my background, need a lot of time spent in the Academy of Science and Research in terms of what the company does and our DNA, and that's no pun intended there in terms of the use of mRNA technologies and how we build our drugs and how we research. And so, that's where I had to spend some time getting up to speed. But that academy also has new advancements that are happening all the time, and whether it be gene editing or anything else that's new, that's not what our company is doing core, but that is the future that we go after. Those academies embrace those new capabilities. From a digital perspective, we have an academy, which is the Academy of Digital. I have a dean of digital, of our digital academy. So we really emulate the university framework. And it is the job of that academy to embrace the new technologies and help bring people up to speed, and then embrace new technologies to bring them where they didn't know where to go. And so that is the key to our success, really, across our adoption of AI across the company. It did start with a very heavy, amazing mandate from top down that if you don't do this now, you'll be left behind, from our CEO. And so then the academy took that, and we first started training our senior leadership cohort. And we started very simply. We started with learning how to write a prompt, do prompt engineering. And we built our own internal version of ChatGPT called Moderna Chat, MChat. And we did that so that we could move rapidly and bring new features and capabilities as the market was still figuring itself out. And so we leveraged Moderna Chat, MChat, to initially teach prompt engineering, bring our organization through till we built simple prompts up to sophisticated prompts to do real work, not just have fun with. And over that time, ChatGPT really has started to flourish, and they actually caught us and surpassed our feature set. And so we moved over and migrated onto enterprise ChatGPT, which has moved us from prompt engineering and super prompt engineering into the creation of GPTs that have business impact. And so that's been our evolution. And we started with our senior leadership cohort, and then we brought the rest of the company through it through specific academy courses and training that we had. And some of them were mandated that we must take. And as we did that, we really learned a lot about how learning and adoption go hand in hand. And it turns out if you just do a course, the adoption, it'll be okay, but not where you want it to be, where you're using it for business impact. And so in year 2, we shifted our learning to small business purpose groups brought together, where we're focusing just on their use cases and how to leverage, in this case, GPTs to really transform how they work. And it all ties back to what you started with. We're a company of 6,000 people, and we want to have the most impact from those 6,000 people. We don't want to be 100,000 people. And so by leveraging this technology, we believe we can shift a ton of task-based work away from our employee base to using automation and GPTs and AI that frees them up to go do the more thinking type work that we want our knowledge-based workforce to spend more time doing. And so that's kind of how we've seen the shift happen at our organization.
You raise a point that helps me recall an earlier point you made, which is that your technology is primarily born in the cloud. Yours is a company that's just about to have its 14th anniversary, if I have my dates correct, whereas most of your competitors were born in the 1800s. And so I would imagine the mindset of an organization born so recently is different. Not that you've worked for the competitors, and so it's not as though you know them from the inside, but I imagine there are some advantages in the fact that Moderna is so modern, in fact, in its way of thinking, in its way of operating, the fact that it has not developed such a massive size where it can't kind of have an appropriate balance between use of great technology to enhance people and allow it to produce at levels that might require many more people, as you alluded to earlier. Can you talk about your own reflections of the advantages of a relatively a birthday that is relatively recent, especially as compared to the competition?
Yeah, I mean, so you're spot on. I haven't been at those other companies that have been around for hundreds of or 100 years and have 100,000 plus people. But what I can say is what guides Moderna is really our mindsets. And companies talk about them, but they're ingrained in everything we do. And that really is the guiding principles of how we run and operate ourselves inside the company. And the fact that it's such a new company, it's easy to adopt those mindsets. And so I really want to pay homage to, Tracy Franklin, our head of HR, that said, hey, we must codify the special sauce of Moderna into a set of Moderna mindsets. And so that lays the foundation. And a bunch of those mindsets are really focused around our differentiating capabilities, to your point, that allow us to really pivot fearlessly. Like I've been at a large bank institution before, not Capital One, but let's say Citibank, where I was. And to move Citibank is like moving an ocean tanker through the ocean. Moving Moderna, we can pivot like a motorboat. We can go extremely fast because, and it's not that one's better or worse than the other. It's just that it's the matter of fact. We have fewer people. We have simplified systems. We have less gravity holding us back from being able to make the changes that we need to make. We're a very flat organization. And so the hierarchical nature of this is my fiefdom, this is my kingdom, it doesn't quite exist here at all at Moderna. And that nimbleness of being able to take people and technology and move it to wherever it needs to be so that we can do what's right for our patients is like breathtaking. It feels like a tech startup from my background. Obviously, there's biotech startups that feel like this. I just never been there. I've been at, Microsoft and Amazon at early days where they were growing up, and I saw that ability to do that. And then I saw them move into the behemoths that are harder to pivot. And so for Moderna, we really embrace the challenge to stay nimble and small and focused, and that startup entrepreneurial mentality is is really innate in our DNA, and I think that's the huge differentiator between us and incumbent big players that I think they could get there through a massive transformation, but I think it's going to take a lot of time, and by that time we'll be already moved on to the next capability we're going after.
Very interesting. As I mentioned in the intro, and as you've added to in the recent example, your most recent experiences professionally prior to joining Moderna were in financial services in various forms, Capital One, MasterCard, you mentioned Citi. Talk a little bit about what you've seen as useful analogies from your past in your new setting. You mentioned, of course, naturally you needed to learn more about the company and the industry, so it's not as though it's plug and play by any stretch of the imagination. But I wonder, one of the good things about having a leader from a different industry is questioning the shibboleths of an existing mode of operation, asking questions as to why do we do things this way, and perhaps understanding where there are, as I mentioned before, useful analogies from your past experiences that apply in an organization like yours. Any interesting insights as you reflect upon that journey?
Yeah, so thank you for that. I would argue if I look past my career, the thing that resonates with me most at Moderna that will help the organization succeed is the time I spent at Capital One with respect to deeply caring and learning about regulatory and compliance in everything that we do. Capital One had gone through a couple of impactful issues that came with regulatory scrutiny and operational rigor. And I'm super proud to have been there and proud of that team, to have seen how they developed a risk mindset, a risk operating mindset that enables that company to thrive. They were the first bank to go to the cloud. They like an existing bank that transformed themselves to the cloud. Other banks natively in the cloud, but the way they did that, the way they managed regulatory and compliance and built frameworks and mechanisms around it with a fairly small set of people, like not large sets of people, like not massive, large risk organizations that you see in large banks, but using technology to do so. I tip my hat to Rob Alexander, the CIO there, and the team. Like that really resonates with me with respect to my learnings there paying forward here at Moderna, because obviously the regulatory and compliance rigor, exponentially rises when we're dealing not just with financial money, but with people's health. And I'm glad it is. And I'm glad it's that way. And so bringing those best practices here and applying it to the health industry from a technology perspective, while also learning tons about GXP, GMP, GLP, GCP, which are the regulatory, the regulatory frameworks of the health industry. It's just been great. I think I would have had a lot more of a ramp without having had that experience at Capital One. So that's kind of one thing that I brought from there. But I'm a pattern person from a technologist. And I think having been at Microsoft and Amazon through their growth and having seen the systems being built and having built the systems, that power and run the e-commerce engine at Amazon through high growth throughput and learning how to refactor and how to think differently about your systems and the patterns you learn by doing that, very similar and applicable to a company like Moderna that's moving crazy fast as well and continuously evolving our systems. And so I leverage a ton of patterns from the past. And then, luckily, having been at founding member CEO companies like, Microsoft and Amazon, and now at Moderna, and Capital One was like that too. That's a different beast that's a different kind of company than a traditional company that isn't like that. And so the culture, the patterns, the entrepreneurship all really apply and give it that energy that makes you thrive.
Really interesting insights. I appreciate those reflections, Brad. We talked about numerous trends that you're writing and applying in your organization. Any others that come to mind that you would underscore that have you excited? Any additional insights you'd provide?
Well, I think I don't know if it's an insight, but what really galvanizes, I think, around success is really around the team. It's about the people. It's about the hiring. Moderna has such a high bar for hiring, and the way in which we treat our people, is second to none in terms of, the access to learning, the access to our leadership, And I got to say, like the insights where I've seen it work very successfully in the past, it's like that at Moderna times 10 in terms of the ability to move fast. Now, at the same time, like other places, like, well, I think probably maybe unique to Moderna, it's also not a place for everybody, which we embrace, like because of the pace, because of the mission, because of the impact you're having. And it's like there's a lot of always on time and focus and diving crazy deep, and ownership expands like the entire stack of the company. We believe in this concept of dynamic range, where at one point you might be talking to Stefan, and the next moment you're helping code review something for one of your developers, and that level of being able to scale. I don't know. I think that's very insightful to a place that maintains our people with the thing that made you excited about what you originally did. There's old memes of stuff of like, oh, as you move up from management, you forget about what you used to love to do. But that doesn't exist here. You still love the thing you used to do, even though you might be managing teams and large organizations. You still get to do what you were passionate about in the first place. And for me, that's a big insight. Being in places where you kind of lose that and you're not attached to the detail as much, I don't know, your engagement level kind of changes. And so for me personally, and I think for most of the folks at Moderna, that level of engagement stays super high when you can transcend either the technical stacks or the organizational stacks, at depth at all levels. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for. I think that's the insight that popped to mind for sure.
Oh, well, I love that. Thank you so much. A really salient point you raise. Last question I had for you. I wonder if there's anything present or past that you've read, listened to, or watched that is particularly impactful to you that you would recommend to others. Anything come to mind, Brad?
It's funny. I'll use an example you wouldn't expect. And I'm very bad with movie names and actors' names, but there's a book about it. And the reason it's kind of neat. So there's this movie with Matt Damon, actually, and he goes up to Mars and he gets left in Mars. I think it's called The Mission or something like that. And you might say, wow, that's really not a very insightful type of a book or a movie. However, when you look at what happened with someone being left on Mars, fictional a bit, but what that person had to do is he had to figure out how to survive and how to decompose problems down and look for your constraint. Like, what's your nearest constraint that will kill you? Okay, let's go deal with that constraint. And then I'm going to unlock that one and then move on to the next one. And then I'll move on to the next one. And as you do that, you keep increasing the longevity potential that the person had living in a, different environment with few resources. And the reason I share that example is because I think as a technologist, no matter what you're doing, you're always looking for what are your constraints? What are your bottlenecks? How are you trying to unlock the potential? How do you remove avoidable effort from the system so that the system becomes leaner and moves faster? And as you go through that, you eventually start building really nice, elegant systems as you go through that process. And so I just recently reread that book, and that was the one that was top of mind for me. Not as insightful as, Tuesdays with Maury or something like that. But, that's the one that resonated with me the most, as like, love to share others to really think about as you attack problems, how do you start decomposing them down to understand your constraints and your dependencies and how to unlock them? Because as a leader, our jobs are to bring results and operate. And I think having that skill set has been very, very powerful in my career. So
yeah, The Martian, I think is what it's called.
Martian. There you go.
That's great.
You were looking it up on the internet.
I wish I could say I came up with it right away, but I had the advantage while you were talking of looking it up. So guilty as charged. But yet again, I think, Brad, a great example of you analogizing, as we were just talking about the analogies you pulled from financial services into your current post. And I love that even as you think about impactful books to you in a business setting, that a book like that draws useful analogies for you and for others. So I really appreciate the thoughtful response. And Brad, I wanted to thank you more generally speaking for a really dynamic conversation, emblematic of the fascinating post you have as CIO of Moderna, and also drawing in from your experience across numerous scaled organizations. I really appreciate you taking time with me today and sharing so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate the opportunity to share our journey at Moderna and what we're up to, and just really a big thanks. Thank you.